Hello, Samadan here, and welcome to another week of gold making. Wow, it's been quite the week. We've got a date for 9.2 coming out, which is fantastic. So 22nd of February, 23rd here in the EU. Get ready for exploring a new zone, get ready for the race for world first. We'll go through all of that in the Wowhead blog in a moment. First, I'll briefly talk about what I've been doing in my own gold making, which I think I can best demonstrate by looking at my TSM graph, because that describes what's been going on with me at the moment. We were here at 5.5 million and we are down. Big jump there. That says 1.8 million, but in reality it's actually 895,000 because there's a million missing there. Why there's a million missing? Well, that will all come about if you look at the video that I've also got coming out, which is all about my little holiday to Draenor, where I've been spending. Now, hopefully, I've just not been spending needlessly, and I'm actually going to make some money. That's the long-term plan, but it is a very long-term plan because this is investments for both things that I can make. So that's going to be very interesting to see if that actually works out for me or not. If it does, then great. If not, well, I had fun learning in the process anyway. So other than that, my usual sales and things coming through, a few items here and there, just relisting my auctions, nothing massive. You can see here I've sold some light step-off plates and Mark of the Claw, so keeping everything restocked. You never know when someone's going to buy something. So let's talk about the Wowhead blog. So the 214th edition of the blog, and it's talking about 9.2 and the preparation we've all been making and what to look out for and what sort of timelines to think about when it comes to what we can craft, when we can craft them, and where we could potentially make some money in various markets, not just legendaries. There's lots of different opportunities here. First and foremost, definitely, we have the 9.2 launch date, as I mentioned earlier, so 22nd of February. Fantastic news. Really looking forward to that. Raiders will get themselves ready for their races to World First. I quite like the way the chapters are unlocking over time. It gives us some interesting markets here because, as far as I know, unless things change last minute, the rank 7 base legendaries won't actually be craftable until the Tome of Eternal becomes available, which apparently at the moment is chapter 5 with the Crown of Wills, which happens at week 3. Unless, of course, there are any changes on the PTR and it just comes out to be a reputation requirement, in which case, if it comes down to being honoured, that's going to probably be as quick as week 1 or 2. With honoured, that comes the new Crafter's Mark of the first one, the unique ones, which replaces the Mark of the Chained Isle, and then the new Crafter's Marks 4, which is going to be the catch-up gear at 233. Now, this is going to be a big seller, I think, a nice little market. So if you can get all your alts, your profession crafters, up to honoured as quickly as possible, these markets are going to be fantastic early on as everyone catches up with their gear before they start getting into the whole legendaries and tier sets and things like that, that they'll upgrade their gear further. And then there's a big discussion around legendaries at the moment. There's a lot of best in slot locations. Wowhead themselves have done some guides and updated those on what's the potential for each class and spec. That's going to change and settle over time, so we'll keep an eye on that one. Expect changes in these markets, but overall, if you can cover as many slots as you can, that's going to be a great advice there. We also have the fact that the materials from the Covenant zones are still likely to be in demand because there's not a huge number of new potions. There's a new feast and there's a new healing potion, but a lot of the other potions will still be in demand, and they require herbs from the other Covenant zones, which people aren't likely to be exploring as much now. And I've got a little bit more of expansion on that further down. Obviously, at the start of a new raid, potions, enchants and missives, the demand for those are likely to increase as people get new gear and want to enchant those, or new legendaries and want to put the missives on them, and potions for the consumables for the raid. So imagine those markets will spike as well. And there will also be changes or things we haven't noticed and little niches that will come out from this. There's a few other little bits and pieces from the recipes, not a huge amount. Little markets there I'm sure you'll be able to make some money on as well. So there's a lot of interesting things to look forward to with 9.2. And obviously new players returning, wanting to gear up their characters and their alts. So I think there's going to be lots of activity on the auction house. Now, Olgrom has updated their legendary spreadsheet, which was going through and speculating on which legendary slots are going to be most in demand. So this has been updated since all the recommendations have been published by Wowhead. So there's a link to the old post here. This is very much going through and saying, okay, which slots are going to be most in demand for each class and spec, and bearing in mind that we were also going to have tier sets fighting for some of the positions, so there may be a little bit of shifting around here and there. So this goes through an in-depth analysis of all the different things, of what's changed. So the most in-demand things are likely to be cloth, legs, wrist and head, leather, shoulder, chest and head, mail, head, legs, feet, hands, plate, chest, legs and shoulder. So if you are looking to get into legendaries and you haven't got everything maxed out already, those might be ones that are worth looking into first. Bear in mind though, these are the sort of things that other people will be looking at. Where the competition is highest, you'll get into the cancel scan meta, so it's not necessarily going to be where you make the most money. You might make money with a few other niches that other people haven't covered. In an ideal situation, you'll have everything covered, but as we know, this is really expensive with legendaries, so do what you can if you're going to get into this market. It's just so expensive. I'm only doing it myself just, for science, but I wouldn't necessarily call it a fun gold making method when you're throwing so much gold away. It just seems so wasteful to me. But this is fantastic analysis for those looking at these markets, and thank you, Olgrom, for updating your spreadsheet on this one. Now, thinking of different markets, I mentioned about herbs and ores possibly spiking. The chances are they will at the start with all the consumables that will be needed. Tirsenus here goes through and goes a very detailed analysis comparing it back to Battle for Azeroth and what happened between patch 8.2 and 8.3. And there are similarities you can see here on the Undermine journal. If you look at Zin and Thid and go through here, you can see a second spike basically as the new patch came out. If you look at something like Widowbloom for current content, you can see, if we go to all here again, you can see when 8.1 came out, which is kind of a similar situation as we have now, there was a small spike in prices as everyone needed all the consumables, but then it dropped off fairly quickly. How quickly this will drop off with the release of 8.2, I don't know yet. It's all going to depend on your server as well and what kind of stock levels they have. I know from my visit to Draenor that they have a huge amount of herbs, but then there's going to be a lot of people raiding there as well. So this is going through and looking at the new herb, which is Frostflower. The new ore is Progenium. Those are used for a lot of things, but still, Widowbloom, Marrowroot, Vigil's Torch, all the Covenant herbs and ore are going to still be required in various aspects. So if you can stock up on these, it might be worth just having a few and seeing what happens to the prices and then shifting some later. Although, of course, it may be too late now. People have been stocking up, myself included, left, right and centre. So your mileage may vary depending on how much you have. But it's very exciting. Lots of interesting stuff coming out for 9.2. So be prepared as best you can. Think about the markets you're going to get into. Follow the news. See what's going on. And have a think about what you might want to do. And of course, enjoy the game. Have fun. And progress your characters in the new zone. All lots of things to enjoy. So moving on, I have a nice little video here from the other end of the spectrum from Penguin, talking about tips they wish they knew as a beginner. Now, this splits down to sort of the things when you look back as a gold maker, once you've been doing it for a few years, you say, I wish I'd known that early on. And these are some very handy little tips. I mean, obviously diversify, which is a very good advice. The video goes into these into a lot more detail. I'll just go through them briefly here. Do not be afraid to use your gold. As you could see here with my spending, I am making lots and lots of investments right now. Hopefully a lot of those will pay off, but it is still a risk and we'll see what happens over the long term. But money is a resource to be used. It's not really doing anything if it's just sitting there in the bank. And friendly advice on TSM, yes, it does have a steep learning curve, but it's worth it. Don't be too disconcerted when you get started with TSM. It's kind of the essential gold making add-on. You don't have to make gold. There are plenty of other people who do make gold without using TSM, so it's not the be-all and end-all, but it's well worth the investment if you are looking into getting into gold making. And second to that, learn to craft and restock, which is where the real strength of TSM comes out. Work out how those operations work, and that will really get you going with gold making, particularly with professions. And another note, which I totally subscribe to, it's not all about legendaries. Yes, they're the big ticket numbers that you see a lot of people putting around, and it's very expensive to get into. But you can make gold in many other ways. The crafter's marks, the novice crafter's marks, is still solid sellers. Bags, other little profession bits, old world professions, doing the mission table. There's so many different ways you can make gold. It's not just about legendaries. So don't despair if you're not getting into that market. It's a very specialist niche. Not one of my favourite, I must be honest about, in terms of all the ways I've made gold over time. I would say legendaries is probably a system I'll be glad to see the back of come the next expansion. Now, this topic was one particularly close to my heart. Wowhead has come up with a very nice spreadsheet comparing server prices and purchasing power across servers. So they go into a lot of detail here, talking about the Big Mac index and purchasing power parity. They're much better explained here in the post, and if you follow the wiki links here, I think it would be better explained more so than I can. But the thing I looked at here was the graph, which was very, very interesting. This is EU servers in terms of purchasing power parity. So basically, the summary is anything here on the top left is expensive and there's not much of it, and there's not many people on. And over in the high pop, the prices are much lower. Now, the thing that really got me was my server here, Shadow Sun, right up top left. And look at the difference between that and one of the more popular servers, say like Draenor, is all the way down here. And so this is a lovely indicator. You can see this kind of thing if you look on the Undermine journal on various items. Like here, if you look at Widow Bloom, this is on the US servers, but you can see basically these servers here don't have a lot of quantity and the prices are high. And these servers down here have more quantity and the prices are lower. So you can see the difference there. But this graph here is a much nicer way of seeing it across several different commodities. And Wowhead goes through and explains how to actually set this up yourself and the TSM strings involved. So really detailed post if you're looking to replicate this yourself. It's really incredibly useful information. And it inspired me to go on my own little journey, which I haven't linked to here, but if I get the video finished in time, I'll add that on as well, where I went on a little holiday to Draenor, bought up some items and then came back. And I'll talk all about that in the video that it should be about here in the post, if you see that. If you are thinking about jumping between servers, and the thing that really helped me was this video by Kachak, which talks about how to fund the price of your server transfer by buying things from one and selling it on the other, and what kind of materials to look out for from going from low to high and going from high to low. So some really, really useful information in there as well. It's something I hadn't really considered before, but it was a lot of fun doing it. So I'll be very interested to see what happens long term with the results of that. But if you're looking into things like the pet markets, you can use this to help give you a gauge as to where to buy and sell your pets from. So that was a nice fun way to look across different servers and see where you might want to make your gold. So overall, I think there's some good variety there. Everything from beginners to cross-server to what to look forward to in 9.2. So I hope this blog this week was useful to you. Good luck in your preparation for 9.2. I hope you've got all the materials you want and you're all ready to make some gold with the increase in activity on the auction house. It's always a fun time at the start of a patch when new recipes are unlocked, new zones are unlocked, and there's always new things to discover. So good luck on your gold making adventure. Happy gold making, and I'll see you very soon.